What if I told you that the most powerful forces don't make noise when they move? They don't show up in headlines until it's too late, because the strongest earthquakes are always silent until the ground beneath us starts to split. For years, we've watched Iran through the lens of sanctions, protests, and political isolation. But while the world was distracted, something else was unfolding behind the curtain. Connections were forming, whispers were traveling across borders, and alliances were quietly being stitched together. Not in the open, but in the shadows. These weren't just political pacts. They were bound by shared struggle, shared resistance, and shared vision. Iran didn't need an army marching under one flag. It built a network. Hezbollah, Houthis, militias, cyber cells, all working like organs of the same body. Independent, but connected. Quiet, but dangerous. And now, these secret alliances have activated. But here's the truth. Power today doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears a digital mask. Sometimes it flies under the radar. A drone, a tweet, a cyber breach, a gas pipeline suddenly shutting down. These are not coincidences. These are coordinated signs of a rising strategy, one that doesn't rely on brute force, but on precision, surprise, and psychological influence. And while the world focuses on visible threats, Iran's real weapon is patience. It plays the long game. It lets its allies carry out its will while it stays hidden behind layers of plausible deniability. What does this mean for the rest of the world? It means the old world order, where power was predictable and alliances were loud, is fading. It means we are entering a new phase, where uncertainty is the strategy, where unpredictability is the plan, and where those we once overlooked are now rewriting the rules. The world is waking up, but maybe too late. The alliances we laughed off are no longer in the shadows. They are on the move. And what happens next might just shock the world. Not because we didn't see it coming, but because we chose not to look. Iran's approach to regional influence has never relied solely on conventional military strength. Instead, it has quietly nurtured a network of alliances that operate under the surface, often unseen by the international community, until their actions speak louder than any formal declaration. This silent brotherhood includes groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Shiite militias in Iraq such as Kataib Hezbollah, and Syrian forces loyal to Bashar al-Assad. These alliances are not temporary or opportunistic. They are grounded in shared ideological, religious, and strategic goals, particularly in opposition to Western and Israeli influence in the Middle East. Iran has invested decades in building trust, providing funding, weapons, training, and even political guidance to these groups, weaving them into a broader vision of resistance and regional transformation. This network allows Iran to project power and influence far beyond its borders without taking direct responsibility for conflicts. Each of these allies can act independently, but their actions often align with Tehran's broader objectives. For example, Hezbollah's missile arsenal serves both Lebanese and Iranian strategic interests. The Houthis' attacks on Saudi infrastructure serve Iranian goals in the Gulf, even if Iran is never explicitly. These allies function like extensions of Iranian policy, providing Tehran with deniability and flexibility while simultaneously creating multiple pressure points against adversaries. These relationships have evolved through a combination of ideological alignment and pragmatic necessity. Many of these groups, especially Hezbollah and Iraqi militias, share Iran's Shia identity and view Tehran as a protector of their political and religious interests. But beyond sectarianism, what binds them is a collective sense of resistance against Western intervention, against Israeli policies, and against Sunni powers that challenge Iran's regional ambition. Iran, in turn, portrays itself as the nucleus of this resistance front, offering not only support, but also a model of self-reliance. What makes this silent brotherhood especially potent is its invisibility to casual observers. These aren't traditional state alliances with embassies and treaties. They're informal, decentralized, and flexible, allowing them to adapt quickly to changing conditions. And because they operate in different countries with varied identities, their coordination often goes unnoticed until they strike. Iran doesn't need to declare war. Its partners are already engaged. Its influence is embedded, not imposed. And its reach is growing precisely because it remains underestimated. Iran's strategic alignment with global powers like China and Russia has reshaped its geopolitical position in ways that defy traditional Western narratives. For decades, Iran was portrayed as an isolated rogue state, trapped under the weight of economic sanctions and political marginalization. But over time, it began forging deeper, more meaningful ties with powerful Eastern allies that shared its interest in challenging Western dominance and reshaping the global order. These relationships are not merely tactical. They are rooted in shared economic needs, mutual geopolitical interest, and a common resistance to American influence. China, with its Belt and Road Initiative, views Iran as a key transit and energy hub linking Asia to Europe. Their 25-year cooperation agreement, valued at hundreds of billions of dollars, includes Chinese investments in Iranian infrastructure, energy, and telecommunications. In return, China secures a steady supply of oil and a strategic partner in the Gulf. Beyond trade, the two countries are deepening military cooperation, participating in joint naval exercises, and aligning diplomatically in international forums. This partnership allows Iran to bypass many of the effects of Western sanctions, giving it economic lifelines and political legitimacy that were previously out of reach. Russia, too, has grown closer to Iran, particularly through shared involvement in the Syrian conflict. Moscow and Tehran coordinated military support for the Assad regime, using the war as a testing ground for strategic collaboration. Over time, their cooperation extended into arms deals, intelligence sharing, and efforts to undermine US presence in the region. Russia benefits from Iran's regional networks, while Iran gains military technology, political backing at the UN, and a powerful friend in global diplomacy. This alignment was further solidified after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as both nations found themselves increasingly isolated from the West and more reliant on one another for economic and military support. Together, these alliances serve to counterbalance Western influence and create an emerging multipolar world, where power is no longer dictated by the United States and its allies. Iran is no longer just a regional actor, it is now part of a global axis that includes two of the world's most powerful nations. This triangle of cooperation, China, Russia, and Iran, has enabled Tehran to expand its reach, embolden its foreign policy, and engage in activities that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. It has shifted the global balance quietly, methodically, and with growing confidence. Iran's strategy of influence has evolved into a powerful mechanism of indirect warfare where activation of proxies creates a battlefield without borders. Unlike conventional military tactics that rely on national armies and formal declarations, Iran has empowered a web of non-state actors to act on its behalf across multiple regions. This proxy system includes groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Iraqi Shiite militias, and even cyber warfare cells operating across the digital landscape. The genius of this approach lies in its decentralization. Each group operates independently in its own domain, yet remains ideologically and strategically connected to Tehran. This activation has been observed in recent years through a series of escalating events. When Hezbollah launches rockets into Israel, or when the Houthis strike Saudi oil infrastructure, it is rarely viewed as part of a larger, coordinated campaign. But these attacks often coincide with Iranian geopolitical pressure points, suggesting a level of orchestration that offers Iran the advantage of plausible deniability. It doesn't need to engage in direct confrontation. Its allies become the face of resistance, allowing Iran to expand its influence without triggering immediate retaliation. The battlefield in this strategy is no longer confined to physical borders. It includes maritime zones in the Persian Gulf, drone warfare in Iraqi and Syrian airspace, and even cyberspace, where Iran's digital allies conduct espionage and disruption operations targeting Western infrastructure. This fluid and adaptive form of warfare is difficult to counter because it defies the traditional playbook of nation-to-nation conflict. It leverages chaos, ambiguity, and unpredictability as tools of dominance. What makes the activation of these proxies especially significant is the timing and precision of their operations. Often these groups coordinate responses to global events, such as the assassination of Iranian leaders, new rounds of sanctions, or regional peace talks involving Israel and Arab states. When Iran's core interests are threatened, these proxies begin to stir, sending clear messages without requiring official statements. It's a strategic chess game where Iran uses every piece on the board without moving its king. This method has proven effective in destabilizing adversaries and drawing international attention to Iran's regional power. It's not just about war, it's about signaling strength, influence, and resilience through indirect confrontation. The battlefield is wherever its proxies choose to act, and through them, Iran maintains an omnipresent pressure that shifts the balance of power in its favor. Iran's evolving strategy includes a critical, yet often overlooked front: information warfare and psychological operations. In today's interconnected world, battles are no longer fought only with missiles and tanks. They are fought with narratives, perceptions, and influence campaigns. Iran, along with its network of allies, has embraced this domain with precision and long-term vision. It understands that changing what people believe can be more powerful than any physical attack. Through state-backed media outlets, social media manipulation, cyber influence campaigns, and misinformation tactics, Iran exerts pressure not just on governments, but on entire populations. This psychological warfare is designed to destabilize the morale of adversaries, create confusion, and amplify divisions within societies. By promoting selective truths, twisted narratives, or entirely fabricated stories, Iran manages to present itself as the victim, the liberator, or the hero, depending on the audience. Its media outlets, like press TV and various online platforms, consistently challenge Western narratives while subtly promoting Iran's role as a guardian of justice in the Middle East. These efforts are not random. They are carefully structured to align with geopolitical goals, often coinciding with military or political escalations. Beyond propaganda, Iran leverages cyber tools to manipulate public discourse. Social media bots, fake accounts, and coordinated campaigns are deployed to sow discord, spread conspiracy theories, or support protests in enemy territories. These psychological tactics are meant to weaken the cohesion of opposing nations from within, causing mistrust between citizens and their leaders. When a population starts questioning its own institutions, it creates space for foreign narratives to take root, and Iran exploits that vulnerability masterfully. Another critical aspect of this warfare is its influence on allied groups and domestic audiences. Iran ensures that its message of resistance, defiance, and sovereignty is consistently reinforced among its proxies and supporters. This ideological conditioning makes these groups not only militarily loyal, but psychologically aligned, ready to act not just for strategic gain, but for a cause they believe is righteous. It becomes a movement, not just a tactic. The psychological front allows Iran to engage in conflict without engaging in war. It allows the regime to erode enemy confidence, control public perception, and amplify its influence far beyond its physical reach. In the age of digital warfare, whoever controls the mind often controls the battlefield. And Iran is playing this game with increasing skill and sophistication. The activation of Iran's secret alliances has triggered a dramatic reassessment among its regional and global adversaries, particularly Israel and Western powers. These nations have long been aware of Iran's influence in the Middle East, but recent escalations have exposed the scale, coordination, and capability of Tehran's proxy network in ways that are impossible to ignore. The conventional intelligence frameworks that once monitored Iran as a direct state actor must now evolve rapidly to account for a far more complex threat matrix, one that includes decentralized militias, cyber cells, ideological allies, and global partnerships that operate beyond the reach of traditional diplomacy or military deterrent. For Israel, this new reality poses an existential challenge. Iran's alliances stretch across its borders, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to Hamas in Gaza, and from Syria to Iraq, forming a strategic encirclement. These groups have been heavily armed, trained, and funded with Iranian support, and now possess advanced weapon systems, including precision-guided missiles and drones capable of striking deep into Israeli territory. Israel's military, once confident in its technological edge, is now being forced to adapt to asymmetrical threats that emerge from multiple directions simultaneously. The Iron Dome and other defense systems are being pushed to their limits, and military planners are reevaluating not just tactical responses, but the broader strategy of deterrence. In the West, particularly the United States and European nations, the concern is both military and geopolitical. The strength of Iran's alliances has undermined years of policy designed to isolate and weaken the regime. Intelligence agencies are now focused on mapping the growing influence of Iranian proxies, tracking their movements, their digital footprints, and their funding sources. Counterterrorism operations are being recalibrated to respond not just to traditional terror threats, but to hybrid actors with state-level capabilities and transnational agendas. Moreover, the realization that China and Russia may be actively supporting or enabling Iran's rise has further complicated diplomatic efforts and forced a deeper strategic pivot toward multipolar threat containment. This reassessment is not limited to military strategy. It's also affecting global economic policy, cybersecurity protocols, and regional alliances. Western powers are now working more closely with Gulf states and Israel, sharing intelligence and conducting joint military drills. But even these efforts are struggling to keep pace with the adaptability and unpredictability of Iran's network. What once seemed like manageable instability has now become a shifting landscape of threats that demand a new level of coordination, innovation, and urgency. Iran's transformation from a regionally isolated state into a globally relevant power marks one of the most dramatic geopolitical shifts of the 21st century. For decades, Iran was portrayed as a pariah nation, crippled by sanctions, diplomatically cornered, and economically suffocated. Yet behind that image, Iran was silently crafting a new identity, one that redefined its role from a defiant survivor to a strategic player, with the capability to influence regional balances and challenge global narratives. This shift didn't happen overnight. It was the result of long-term planning, patient alliance building, and strategic adaptability that allowed Iran to weather external pressures while expanding its sphere of influence. By aligning itself with powerful nations like China and Russia, Iran broke through its isolation, accessing economic corridors, military technology, and diplomatic backing. At the same time, its support for non-state actors gave it control over multiple flashpoints in the Middle East, from Lebanon and Syria to Iraq and Yemen. These developments elevated Iran's relevance in any serious discussion about the region's future. Whether it's oil security in the Strait of Hormuz, peace negotiations in Syria, or counterterrorism efforts in Iraq, Iran is no longer an outsider. It is a stakeholder with influence that must be acknowledged. Iran's ability to turn its disadvantages into leverage has redefined how power is measured in the modern era. Sanctions that were meant to isolate it only pushed it towards self-reliance and forced innovation. Political pressure led it to deepen ties with alternative global powers and economic systems. Even military confrontations were used to demonstrate resilience and project symbolic strength to both allies and enemies. What Western powers once dismissed as signs of desperation now look more like calculated adaptations to a hostile environment. The perception of Iran on the world stage is also shifting. For some nations, it is a defiant force standing against Western dominance. For others, it is a destabilizing actor. But what cannot be denied is that Iran has transitioned from being a reactive nation to one capable of shaping global events proactively. Its secret alliances, strategic patience, and multi-dimensional warfare have made it central to any equation involving regional security, energy politics, or ideological influence. As a result, Iran is no longer merely surviving the global system. It is now actively influencing how that system evolves. What we once viewed as scattered sparks across the Middle East have now revealed themselves as a carefully engineered firestorm, designed, ignited, and controlled through Iran's hidden web of alliances, from the silent rise of proxy forces to the calculated embrace of global powerhouses like China and Russia. Iran has transformed its position on the world stage from a state under siege to a central player shaping the very dynamics of global power. Its battlefield extends far beyond borders into minds, markets, and media. The world is no longer facing Iran alone, but a coordinated network that operates in silence and strikes with precision. As we move forward, it is clear what happens next will not only reshape the Middle East, it could shift the balance of global order in ways we are only beginning to understand. Thank you for joining this journey of awareness, insight, and truth. In a world full of noise, may you always have the courage to listen deeply, stay curious, stay aware, and above all, stay grounded in purpose. Good luck, and may wisdom guide your path forward.